My girlfriend told me. I don't want drama. I replied, understood. Then I packed my things, left our key on the counter, accepted the job in Texax, and quietly moved on. From a distance, I watched as her graduation fairy tale slowly turned into a tough lesson about respect. I'm Marcus, 26, and until 3 months ago, I was living in a small apartment just outside Atlanta while finishing my master's degree in information systems. I worked part-time in IT support and had a standing offer from a company in Texas that I kept postponing because my girlfriend, Ava, was graduating in the spring and needed stability. Ava is 24. We'd been together just over 2 years. She was finishing her communications degree and treated her upcoming graduation like it was a royal coronation. Photo shoots booked, custom dress ordered, caption drafts written weeks in advance. We were living together in an apartment that was technically in both our names, but I handled most of the bills because she said she didn't want financial stress before launching her career. From the outside, we looked solid. She posted about building with my person and tagged me in stories about late-night study sessions. But behind the curated feed, the tone had shifted months earlier. It started small. She'd roll her eyes if I questioned her spending. Call me negative if I suggested we tighten up before her student loan grace period ended. She framed everything as me trying to control the vibe. Then the phrase showed up. I don't want drama, Marcus. She used it whenever I brought up anything inconvenient. Her texting some guy from her internship at 1 a.m., not drama. Her canceling our anniversary dinner because her friends wanted to go bar hopping. Not drama. Her joking publicly that I was lucky she hadn't upgraded yet. Definitely not drama. Any pushback from me? Drama. About 6 weeks before her graduation, I got a formal offer letter from the Texas company. Better salary. Relocation package. Real trajectory. I showed it to her that night, expecting at least a conversation. She barely looked at it. So what? You're just going to run off and leave right before my graduation. That's messy. I don't want drama. I told her it wasn't running off. It was a career move. She said timing is everything and that if I cared about her, I'd wait until after she was settled. I asked what settled meant. She said she didn't know yet, but she didn't want to deal with long-distance complications during her graduation glow-up. Glow-up. That was the word she used. A week later, we argued because I asked why she'd posted a picture with that same internship guy with the caption "Future Connections Matter." She said I was being insecure. I don't want drama, Marcus. If you're going to start, maybe we need space. That sentence landed differently. Because for the first time, it sounded less like a boundary and more like permission. And that's when I stopped arguing. So I started acting. Not dramatically, not passive-aggressively, just differently. The next time she said she didn't want drama, I nodded and said understood. That was it. No follow-up question. No defending myself. No explaining how basic respect isn't drama. I just removed friction from the equation. She seemed almost relieved at first. When she canceled our Friday dinner for a last-minute networking mixer, I didn't protest. I said have fun and stayed home working on certification modules for the Texas job. She gave me a suspicious look on her way out like she expected resistance. When she posted another filtered graduation countdown with the internship guy in the comments hyping her up, I didn't ask about it. I muted her stories instead. I stopped reacting, and I started preparing. I emailed the Texas recruiter and told them I was ready to accept the offer. Asked about relocation timelines, housing assistance, start dates. We locked in mid-June, 2 weeks after her graduation ceremony. I didn't announce that at home. At the apartment, I became efficient. I paid my half of the bills early, stopped covering her extras. When she ordered takeout, I didn't automatically Venmo her portion anymore. If she forgot to transfer utilities money, I reminded her once, not 3 times. The first time I didn't chase her about it. She actually noticed. You're quiet lately. Yeah. You good? Yeah. The thing about people who accuse you of causing drama is they get uncomfortable when there's none. A few days later, she tried picking a small fight about me not being excited enough about her graduation shoot. I'd simply said the photographer did a good job. That's it. That's all you have to say. I shrugged. Looks professional. She stared at me like she was trying to locate the button she used to push. Finally, she said it again. I don't want tension, Marcus. Understood. She actually blinked. That word started irritating her. Meanwhile, I began sorting my things quietly. Important documents into one folder. Clothes I hadn't worn in months into donation bags. I canceled the internet auto pay from my account and switched it to joint billing. She didn't notice at first. Then one night she asked if I was still planning on waiting about Texas. I looked at her calmly. I accepted the offer. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was cold. You're serious? Yeah. She laughed once, sharp. So you're choosing a job over us? I didn't correct her. I just said, you said you didn't want drama. And that's when I saw the first flicker of something in her face that wasn't confidence. After I told her I accepted the Texas offer, she didn't explode. She recalibrated. For the next week, she became unusually affectionate. Random hugs while I was washing dishes. Sitting closer than normal on the couch. Posting throwback photos of us with captions about growth and loyalty. It would have been sweet if it didn't feel strategic. One night, about 3 weeks before graduation, she brought up a celebration trip she wanted to take right after the ceremony. Beach house with her friends. For days. Big send-off into adulthood. She said it casually. You'll still be here then, right? My start date in Texas was 2 weeks after graduation. I said, yeah, I'll still be here. She smiled like she'd secured something. Then she added, I just don't want anything messy during that time. Like no weird conversations about moving or whatever. I need this to be perfect. Perfect. I nodded. Understood. That word again. Her smile tightened. Around this time, I noticed something else. The internship guy, Ryan, started showing up more often. Not physically at the apartment, but digitally. Comments. Inside jokes. Subtle references that didn't include me. I didn't confront her. That would be drama. Instead, I started making logistics calls. I spoke to the leasing office and confirmed I could remove myself from the apartment lease at renewal with 30 days notice. I checked the fine print about early termination fees. I priced out a small storage unit in Texas for arrival. Then I began packing slowly. Not boxes everywhere. Just small, unnoticeable shifts. My books disappeared from the shelf. My extra shoes from the closet. The framed photo of us at last year's Christmas party went into a drawer. She noticed that one. Where'd the picture go? Thought I'd reorganize. Why? No reason. She studied me for a second like she was trying to decide whether to escalate. Then she said it. You're being weird. I shrugged. Just keeping things simple. No drama. That phrase irritated her more when it came from me. The real turning point happened the week of her graduation rehearsal. She came home late, flushed from excitement, talking about how everything felt aligned. Career prospects. New beginnings. Fresh energy. Then she said something casually, almost offhand. I just need to make sure the right people are around me when I level up. The right people. I asked what that meant. She waved her hand. People who don't complicate things. I nodded slowly. That night, after she fell asleep, I booked my one-way flight to Texas for the Monday after her beach trip. And I decided I wouldn't announce it. Graduation week arrived like it was a movie premiere. Her dress was laid out on the bed days in advance. Nails done. Hair appointment booked. Photographer confirmed. She was glowing, I'll give her that. Not because of me. Because of the image she was stepping into. I stayed steady. I helped steam the dress. Drove her to rehearsal. Took photos when she asked. Smiled when her family hugged me and said how proud they were of you too. That word felt like a technicality. The night before the ceremony, she sat on the edge of the bed scrolling through comments on her graduation post. Ryan had commented something about on to bigger stages. She liked it immediately. Then she turned to me. Promise me you won't do anything weird tomorrow. Weird how? Like, no heavy talks. No emotional stuff. I just want clean energy. No drama. Understood. She exhaled like I'd just signed a contract. The ceremony itself was predictable. Caps in the air. Speeches about the future. Endless pictures. I stood next to her in most of them. Held her flowers. Carried her extra shoes. I played my role perfectly. At dinner afterward, her friends toasted to new chapters. One of them joked about who would be around for the next phase. Ava laughed and said, we'll see who survives it. She squeezed my hand when she said it, but didn't look at me. I didn't squeeze back. The next morning, she left for the beach house trip with her friends. I helped load her suitcase into her car. She kissed me lightly and said, don't overthink things while I'm gone. I said I won't. As soon as she drove off, I went upstairs and started packing for real. Not angrily. Not in a rush. Just efficiently. Clothes folded into 2 large suitcases. Important documents into my carry-on. Laptop. Hard drives. Certifications. Passport. I left the shared furniture alone. The couch. The table. The TV. She cared about aesthetic. I cared about mobility. By Sunday night, almost everything that belonged to me was gone except for a few basics, so the apartment wouldn't look hollow if she came home early. Monday morning, I stripped the bed, washed my sheets, and packed the last of my things. Then I took my copy of the key off the ring, placed it neatly on the kitchen counter. No note, no explanation. I locked the door behind me and left for the airport. She didn't notice until Wednesday. She texted me Wednesday afternoon. Hey, did you move your stuff? I was already in Texas, sitting in a temporary corporate apartment that smelled like new carpet and fresh paint. I replied 3 hours later. Yeah, that was it. 5 minutes passed. What do you mean, yeah? I mean, I moved. She called immediately. I let it ring once before answering. Marcus, what is this? I told her calmly that my start date was this week, and I didn't want to create drama during her graduation glow-up. There was silence on the other end. You couldn't even tell me? You asked for clean energy. That irritated her. Don't twist my words. That's not what I meant. I didn't argue. I just said I figured space was better than tension. She exhaled sharply. So that's it. You just leave while I'm gone. You said you didn't want heavy conversations. Another pause. Are you breaking up with me? I thought about that for a second. I said I wasn't doing anything dramatic. I accepted a job and relocated. That's all. She didn't like the absence of a fight. You could hear it in her breathing. This is childish, Marcus. I said I wasn't trying to win anything. I was just aligning my actions with what she'd been asking for. She laughed once, but it wasn't confident. So I come home to an empty apartment and a key on the counter. I said I left the shared items. The lease was still active through the term. Rent for the month was already paid. She switched angles. People are going to ask where you are. Tell them I moved for work. You're making me look stupid. I didn't respond to that, because what she meant was I'd stepped out of the frame without warning. That evening she posted a graduation recap photo dump. No mention of me. No tag. Just captions about independence and stepping into her power. Ryan commented within minutes. Proud of you. I muted the thread and went to bed early. The next day, she texted again. Are we done? I typed slowly. You said you don't want drama. And for the first time in 2 years, I meant it exactly how it sounded. Her last message sat on my screen for a full minute. Are we done? I stared at it longer than I expected to. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because I knew what she was really asking. She wasn't asking if the relationship was over. She was asking if she still had access to me. Access to the reassurance. Access to the option. Access to the safety net she assumed would always be there. I typed back one line. I think we already were. 3 dots appeared immediately. So that's it. 2 years, and you just ghost? I didn't respond. She sent another. You're proving me right about you being dramatic. That one almost made me laugh. I'd packed quietly, paid my portion, left the key neatly on the counter. No yelling. No cheating accusations. No public callouts. If that was drama, then she needed a dictionary. Another message came through. Ryan says this is manipulative behavior, by the way. That was the moment clarity solidified. Ryan says, not I feel, not I think. Ryan says, I felt something shift completely inside me. Not anger, just detachment. I opened our message thread, scrolled back once, and realized how many of my replies over the past year were explanations. Defenses. Justifications. This time I didn't explain. I blocked her number. Then Instagram. Then Snapchat. Muted her email just in case. Not out of spite. Out of finality. I didn't announce it. I didn't send a last paragraph. I didn't give a speech about respect. I just removed the line of access. For the first time in years, my phone was quiet in a way that didn't feel tense. 2 days later, a mutual friend texted me. Yo, Ava's kind of spiraling. What happened? I kept it simple. Moved for work. Keeping things clean. Apparently, she'd posted a vague story about betrayal and men who can't handle strong women. Then she deleted it. Then reposted graduation photos again like nothing happened. From a distance, I watched the narrative trying to reshape itself without me in it. But something about it wasn't landing the same. And the real lesson didn't show up immediately. It unfolded slowly. For the first 2 weeks after I blocked her, nothing dramatic happened. No fake accounts trying to follow me. No late-night calls from unknown numbers. No public meltdown. Just silence. And that silence did something interesting. It forced her to build a version of the story without my participation. Through mutual friends, bits and pieces filtered back. Not because I asked. Because people talk. At first, she framed it as me being impulsive. Said I couldn't handle her stepping into a bigger phase of life. That I felt threatened by her success. Success was an interesting word, considering she didn't have a job lined up yet. Then the internship ended. Ryan didn't secure a full-time position either. That detail came up casually from a friend who still followed her closely. Apparently, the future connections she'd been hyping weren't translating into real offers. She'd assumed something would fall into place after graduation. It hadn't. Her student loan repayment schedule kicked in 30 days later. Rent renewal for the apartment was approaching. And for the first time since I'd known her, there wasn't a steady fallback sitting quietly beside her. One Friday night, a mutual friend FaceTimed me. "Bro, she thought you'd call by now." I asked why. He shrugged. "She said you always cave eventually." That hit different. Not because it hurt. Because it confirmed the pattern. She didn't think I'd leave. She thought I'd create just enough tension to prove I cared, then circle back so she could reset the dynamic. Instead, I'd removed myself from the board entirely. Around this time, I started seeing subtle changes in her online tone. The leveling up captions slowed. The graduation glow posts stopped. More generic quotes about growth through pain started appearing. Then one night, she posted something that stuck. "Sometimes silence says more than words ever could." I almost smiled at that. Because she was right. Silence had said everything. And from 800 miles away, I could see the fairy tale graduation narrative starting to thin. Not explode. Just thin. By month 2, the shift wasn't loud. It was practical. Her lease renewal came up, and from what I heard, she tried negotiating the rent down. The landlord didn't budge. Atlanta pricing didn't care about glow-ups. She'd always framed the apartment as ours, but I'd been the one pushing for upgrades. Better Wi-Fi, stable utilities, insurance coverage. Without that steady background work, things started slipping. A mutual friend mentioned she'd complained about how expensive everything suddenly felt. I didn't comment. At work in Texas, my life had stabilized fast. New team, structured hours, real paychecks, health benefits, a routine that wasn't tied to someone else's mood or social calendar. I didn't post about it. That was the part that confused her, apparently. Because I wasn't spiraling publicly. I wasn't subtweeting. I wasn't trying to win. Silence doesn't give people material to fight. About 6 weeks after graduation, I got an email from an unknown address. Subject line, "Can we talk?" I knew who it was without opening it. I read it once. She wrote that she'd been thinking a lot. That maybe things escalated unnecessarily. That she never wanted it to end like this. She mentioned how she assumed I'd at least check in after the beach trip. Assumed. That word again. She said she felt blindsided. Which was interesting, because I'd been clear about Texas for months. She just didn't think I'd actually choose it. I didn't respond to the email. Not out of cruelty, but because reopening the line defeats the boundary. A week later, another mutual friend told me Ryan had started seeing someone else. Publicly. Tagged photos. Soft launch captions. Apparently Ava didn't take that well. The future connections guy had future connected elsewhere. And for the first time, she didn't have a fallback narrative that made her look like she was in control. She'd built a graduation fairy tale around stepping into something bigger. Instead, she stepped into accountability. From a distance, I didn't feel satisfaction, just confirmation. And then something happened that made the lesson even clearer. About 3 months after I moved, something shifted publicly. Not in a dramatic meltdown way. In a slow, visible recalibration. Ava made a long Instagram post about post-grad reality. It was polished but noticeably different in tone. No crown emojis. No leveling up language. Just a caption about how transitions are harder than people admit. She mentioned unexpected changes. Learning who really supports you. Outgrowing versions of yourself. There were a lot of comments. But something stood out. No one asked about me. Not a single "Where's Marcus?" Because she'd spent weeks quietly editing me out of the narrative. That part didn't bother me. What came next did. A mutual friend called me one evening and said Ava had reached out asking if I was seeing someone new. I wasn't. But that wasn't the point. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't ask about the job. She asked if I'd replaced her. That question carried weight, because it revealed what she thought this had been about. She assumed the silence meant I'd moved on emotionally because someone else was filling space. It never occurred to her that I moved on because the dynamic was misaligned. A week later, she posted another story. This one less composed. Dating in your 20s is wild. People say forever and then disappear. Disappear. That word made it clear. In her version, I vanished. In reality, I'd communicated for months. She just categorized everything inconvenient as drama. The most telling update came through a friend who still worked at the company where she interned. Apparently, she'd tried leveraging connections to secure a role there post-graduation. They passed. Ryan had recommended someone else. From what I heard, that stung. Because the fairy tale wasn't just about me staying. It was about everything lining up effortlessly. And when it didn't, there was no one nearby to absorb the friction. From Texas, I watched quietly, not checking her page daily, not obsessing, just occasionally hearing updates like weather reports from a city I used to live in. And then, about 4 months after graduation, she did something that closed the loop completely. About 4 months after graduation, she reached out one last time. Not through email, not through a mutual friend, through LinkedIn, professional platform, public image, controlled tone. The message was short. Hey Marcus, I heard the Texas role is going well. Congrats. I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately. I handled some things immaturely. I hope you're doing well. No accusations. No Ryan references. No passive aggression. Just measured. I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I understood it perfectly. Reflection usually shows up when reality sets in. From what I'd heard, she'd taken a contract marketing role. Not glamorous. Not the dream offer she expected to land right out of graduation. The apartment had been downsized to a cheaper complex across town. The friend group from the beach trip had already started scattering. Fairy tales are easy when someone else absorbs the cost of friction. Harder when you're the one signing the lease and answering the calls. I didn't respond to her LinkedIn message. Not out of bitterness, but because closure doesn't require dialogue when the lesson is already learned. Later that week, I got promoted into a project lead position. Nothing flashy, just earned, structured, steady. I didn't post about it. That was the final difference between us. She curated moments. I built foundations. Looking back, when she said she didn't want drama, she meant she didn't want accountability. She didn't want to negotiate boundaries. She wanted everything smooth without adjusting her behavior. So I gave her exactly what she asked for. No drama, no fight, no scene, just absence. She wanted her graduation to feel like the start of something elevated. Instead, it became the first time she had to stand without a quiet safety net behind her. From a distance, I don't feel resentment. I feel clarity. Sometimes the most dramatic move is doing nothing loud at all. She didn't want drama. Understood. And that was the end of it.